Welcome to A Dark Path, a podcast exploring the depths of witchcraft, magic, the occult, and all things mysterious. Join us on this journey into the unknown, down a dark path overgrown. Find spells and rituals, folklore and legends. Come, set your candles alight to clear your mind and unwind. Delve into the shadows to uncover a dark path.
Hey God, it's us. Welcome to our show. No, we don't talk like that.
I hope you do. Please do it.
I do a little bit.
Sometimes I do.
Welcome back to A Dark Path, a podcast exploring the depths of witchcraft, magic, the occult, and all things mysterious. I'm Allyson Hemma-Romane. I regularly work with ghosts.
And I am Kristen Jackson. I have had experiences since I was very little, but am recently getting into learning more about my spirit guides. And once again, we are in the presence of Heidi from Wise Wolf Craft.
I liked in the present. Feels spooky.
That was me. That was a pun.
I love it. I love it. And I'm Heidi from Wise Wolf Craft. I thought I had never had an experience with a spirit until I started looking at my past and then realized that I was just wrong as hell and wasn't recognizing what was happening.
With us today is another human I admire, Tori, owner of the Spectral Cottage. Tori, will you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and whether or not you call yourself a witch?
Hi, I'm Tori. I'm the owner of the Spectral Cottage. Yes, I do call myself a witch. I consider myself an occultist and a pagan witch, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Heidi and Tori. It is such a pleasure to have both of you. I can't wait just to hear everybody's stuff. I'm really excited because I don't know a lot in this area, so I'm looking to learn.
Before we get into chatting about our work and experiences, you know how we roll. We're going to define some terms. Spirit was first used in the Bible, Common Era 1250 at its first publishing. An animating or vital principle, the immaterial or sentient element of a person. Also, an animating or vital principle, the soul, incorporeal or immaterial being. Spirit communication was first used in 1850 in the New Albany Daily Ledger from Indiana, as in the state Indiana. Based on the belief that our soul survives death, spirit communication is the belief that people alive today can communicate with the souls or spirits of those who have died. Psychic abilities, or strange mental powers and abilities, such as the ability to predict the future, to know what other people are thinking, or receive messages from dead people that cannot be explained by natural laws.
So in episode 5, Developing Intuition and Spiritual Connection, we talked about psychic abilities, which ties into your connection to spirits and your connection to spirit. There's a bunch of different ways you could do that. I want to go through those real quickly, just as a reminder for those of you who weren't with us for that episode, or haven't got a chance to listen. We have clairvoyance, which I feel like most people know. That's one of the ones, the big ones, right? That's being able to see something that you're not seeing with your typical sight, right? Not your mundane vision. This is a different thing. Claircognizance is when you feel like you know something and you know it not with your mundane knowledge, not in a way you can acquire. You acquire the knowledge through extrasensory. Clairaudience is when you literally are hearing sounds that are not being created in a mundane way that can cue you in. Some people hear notes like toning, some people hear speaking. A side note for this is a really scary one if you have this, because in Western medicine, the only explanation we have for this is that you're not well mentally, right? So I like to pause and tell people one of the big things is that first, address your mental health. Right? Always address your mental health. If you're not well, people can't hear your message anyways. So don't let that be part of the recipe. Get your mental health on par. Then, if you're still hearing voices, listen to what they're saying. If they are telling you to harm others, harm yourself, that's not spirit. That could be something evil, or you need more medication. Okay. So that's either way, it's not source. It's not something you should act on. So that was my little aside for clairaudience. We're going to clairsentience. That is when you feel it, like you don't necessarily know it. You may not have the words, but deep in your gut. These are people who talk about, well, my gut hurt, my stomach, that kind of thing. And then this one I kept laughing about because Susie from that episode mentioned this several times and I had never even heard of it. But of course it's there, but and I think you say clairalience, but it's when you smell it. And that makes sense. Of course, like your memory, like, and your smell and all of that, that would totally make sense. I never even thought people were experiencing that, but why not? It's one of your senses and you can take in information through all of your sensors, right? Taste, which is clairgustance, I believe. And that I think is probably the least common way. There is another thing I want to put into this that I don't think people really look at as a clair, but I do feel like can be a big way people connect. That is, if just being empathic. If you're someone who's empathic, you might be sensitive to spirits, right? Because you are going to be picking up on energy. So the same tools you might as an empath use to receive information from a living person, you could use those same tools with someone who is no longer with us. With that, why would you want to do that? What would be the point of communicating, and why do you think that would be important?
My mind went blank there for a second.
The
Me
magic
realizing that
touch.
how many people are going to potentially listen to this broke my brain there for a second.
It's okay.
Communication with spirits and spirit work is really important in witchcraft for a number of different reasons. A lot of it boils down to spiritual growth and personal growth, improving spell work and ritual work, helping you convey messages from your higher self or deities. And a lot of thought process goes into that. Spirits and deities are energy, and us as physical beings get that aid from them in doing our spell work because they are of energy and we are attempting to manipulate energy. So a lot of the thought process is that it'll be more potent, it'll come to fruition easier, and things like that. And so a lot of witches turn to adding in these spiritual beings that are around us to help because of that.
Definitely think, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can talk to spirits. And what I'm going to go over here is not an extensive, exhaustive list of every single way, but just kind of like a quick overview of the most common, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with mediumship and necromancy. So mediumship is defined as a pseudo-scientific practice that involves a person known as a medium or a spirit medium claiming to communicate with spirits of the dead or familiar spirits and living people. I had to look up pseudoscience, so I assume other people might need to know what the heck that is too. So I grabbed that one real quick. Pseudoscience is a proposition, a finding or system of explaining that is presented as science, but lacks the rigor essential to the scientific method. So it hasn't been put through thousands and thousands of trials, basically. To continue on, necromancy. Necromancy is the supposed practice of communicating with the dead, especially in order to predict the future. Seances are a meeting of people in which they attempt to make contact with the dead, especially through the agency of a medium. Divination tools include tarot, dowsing or dowsing rods, rune casting, bone casting, spirit boards, scrying, and you can scry in all sorts of surfaces. So mirror, metal, water. I've also seen it done in fire, crystal ball, and pendulums. You can also do automatic writing as well. And that is said to be produced by a spiritual, occult, or subconscious agency rather than by the conscious intention of the writer. So literally your hand is just automatically writing. So we can also communicate with technology. So now we have advanced scientifically and technology-wise to be able to use such technologies like electromagnetic field detectors, which usually are referred to as EMF meters. I do not know how to say this word. Gauss meters? Gas? Anyone know?
Gauss meter.
It's a meter, and it
It's more sensitive than the other one.
uses electric, yeah, magnetic. Anyways, there's also radio. So spirit boxes typically use like AM/FM frequencies, EVP recorders. There's different kind of options to go there. And there's also temperatures technologies. So thermographic cameras, thermal imaging cameras, infrared thermometers. I've even seen on some of the spirit hunter shows, just night vision cameras. There's a lot of things that you can use to be able to get in touch and connect.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of communicating with spirits, we thought it would be fun to compare an encounter we've had before witchcraft and spirituality to an experience we've had after coming to the craft. I'll go first. The experience I had that sticks out the most is when I first met a guardian deity that I have named Artio. She first appeared to me when I was 7. Saw a bunch of people standing outside that were shadow figures, and it freaked me out. So I told them to go away, went to bed, and then I dreamed about this bear for months chasing me. And that was my first experience. Very terrifying, very alarming, very like unwanted and unprompted in my mind, right? An experience I had after witchcraft was walking through a store with one of my good friends, and I came across a doll. It was like, take me home, take me home, take me home. And so I bought the doll and took it home. It's got a ghost in it, and we regularly work together.
I definitely had a little ghost friend when I was a kid. I know I have mentioned before, I'm not sure if on the podcast, but I talk about Sally a lot. My parents always were like, oh, it's your imaginary friend. That's your imaginary friend. But I swear up and down, this was a little ghost child. He was about the same age, so probably like 5, 6, 7. And we would play together. We would play together all the time. And he was only ever at the house. He was never anywhere else. I had one teddy bear. It was a big, white, fluffy teddy bear. And his name was Bob. I'm a very original namer as a child. So Bob would go missing. And then, of course, couldn't find him, couldn't find him. And then Bob would be back in the same place. And sometimes, I don't know if it was Sally or something else, but like the kitchen cupboards would be all open. So like it was just kind of a very interesting childhood, spiritually wise. One experience I've had after coming to the craft, I had this friend and he was like, I swear there's a ghost in my house. I swear there's a ghost in my house. Da 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 da. And he's like, I want to use the Ouija board. And I'm like, oh my. So this is coming off of like Christianity, and you're going to invite devil into your house, and you're going to get demon attachments. And how dare you use a Ouija board? So I'm like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to light some white candles. We're going to do a white salt circle. We're going to invite it just into the circle. We're going to thank it, let it go. We're going to do all the steps that we can do so it's not going to be attaching. And it was so fun because we ended up talking to, I wish I could remember the little boy's name. It had an X in it, is all I remember. He was a little boy that had passed away during like an accident, and it sounded like it was kind of like a hunting or a farming or some kind of accident outdoors. And he was just hanging out, basically, just, whatever. And then we're like, cool. Still being like this nervous Nelly, I was like, okay, so let's close the circle. Let's think it. Let's, wipe up the like stuff. But we were literally out on Tulalip tribal land in his apartment when we were doing this. So I absolutely believe that it was a little native boy. If it was something maybe disguising itself, I couldn't necessarily say, but it was kind and it was cute and it left and it was a fun experience.
It's kind of hard for me to pick like one experience for each category because I have, since I came out into the world, have loved ghosts. I have loved witchcraft. I have loved occultism. I have loved horror movies. This has been my shtick my entire life. But I was with a group of friends one time, and I'm a teenager in Washington. All my friends are smoking weed. And I was not. So all my friends were not sober and they were having a good time, and we were sitting on a porch so that they could smoke. And I was sitting next to a cabinet. And as everyone was talking, I was just kind of looking at the cabinet, and all of a sudden the door popped open and like flung open next to me. And I just kind of stopped and I looked at it and I was like, huh, that was weird. And so I like closed it. And it was one of those cabinets that like click back into place. So they don't like open super easily. And I was like, that was weird. And then I like went to gesture to one of my friends, like, hey, did you see that? And he was like, don't talk to me about it right now in the state that I'm in. And I was like, you got it, bud. And then we went back inside and I had another thing pop open directly in front of me. It was like the dishwasher had like unlatched and popped open in front of me. And that's when my friend, one of my best friends at the time, who is very sensitive to this kind of thing, she was like, oh, it's because things are attached to you. And again, she was like not sober, so she just went hee hee and like walked away. And I was like, what do you mean? Come back. Tell me more about this right now. I have like literally a billion that I could get into. I have way more about like hearing ghosts and like hearing children in front of me in a group of people where they didn't hear anything, things like that. But then another one that's post getting into witchcraft, this one was more recent. This one's a funny one because I worked at a assisted living facility. A lot of people have passed away, obviously, at a place like that. Everyone I worked with knew that I practice, and they kept joking that I needed to cleanse our kitchen because things would move constantly and that get thrown at people. And I was like, yeah, right. There's no way that's happening. I'm here by myself all the time. I never see anything happening. And I was joking about how I was going to get rid of all the ghosts in the kitchen. And then I walk over to this like big shelving unit, and there's like a crap ton of people in the kitchen joking about this with me. And a glass that I had never seen before, that no one knew was up there, plopped from the top shelf directly onto my head. It was not on the edge. It was a glass no one knew was stuck up there. No one was touching the shelves. It just plopped right onto my head and then shattered on the ground. And then everyone freaked out except for me. And I was just like, I get it. Now I'm definitely going to cleanse because that was rude.
Interestingly, I had like this weird disconnection before witchcraft. I had a story I would tell people all the time about seeing a ghost. And then in the same breath be like, but I've never seen a ghost. And I don't know why I couldn't like put it together. But so I'll try it out. Twice at different points in my childhood, there were, and this sounds weird, but it was completely healthy and appropriate, older men that I had become friends with as a small child. My friend's grandfather and another older guy who was a friend of a friend's family who just was a wandering hippie guy who I just thought was the coolest guy in the world and adored him. Anyhow, these guys are bizarre, right? These guys are both in like their late 70s. And both of these men, I found out they died a day when I had seen them earlier in the day, but I hadn't actually seen them. So that was the whole thing, was like, I was in Marysville and I was like, there's Dale. That is bizarre. Why would Dale be in Marysville? Dale doesn't even live here. That doesn't make any sense. And then I kind of lost track of him and couldn't like talk to him, but I had seen him in the crowd and was like, that's bizarre. Within an hour, my friend called me and told me her grandfather had died. And the same thing happened with this other gentleman, Winston. I saw and was told he had passed within 2 or 3 hours. Again, I got a phone call after I thought I had seen him in a public location and thought I was going to be able to like track him down to speak to him, and then just wasn't able to reconnect. Like, if that makes sense. So it's like I'm seeing him from far away, but then can't like get to him. So then literally would tell those stories and be like, no, but I don't really know if I believe in ghosts, or I've never seen a ghost. So very, very like strong disconnect as a young person, but again, also raised Catholic. I had a lot of like different programs running that like kind of didn't allow me to see that for what it was. And then now in my practice, the thing I found is very interesting is through tarot reading. And I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I feel like for me, when I do tarot, anybody who has passed, who has shit to say shows up. It's like, if I'm going to read for somebody, it's like they see tarot as the opportunity to step in and get a message through, I think is what the idea is. That's probably the place I've seen the most, I don't know if you want to call it like action, but like the most spiritual, like where I've been like totally aware that it's an actual person, like able to tell them like what type of person it is, like and what they're trying to tell them and have it make sense. Unlike you guys, I don't actually talk to spirits that much. I talk to them occasionally. I tend to talk to entities and energies more than like grandpa, for instance.
See, I will say I agree with you on that. I do talk to entities more than I talk to like grandma, grandpa.
I was at this place I love, and I was walking through like literally like corn growing everywhere, walking through the corn, and I heard my name like distinctly and wasn't around anybody. And so I was like, as you would, you look around. And then I realized that, and it's very strange because I don't know how to, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you can't explain it with words really. And so it's like hard to explain what the sensation is, but I all of a sudden am aware that I'm being watched and that the wind is moving in a way that seems really rhythmic and odd. And so I kind of am like, okay, like I'm listening, and then was kind of overwhelmed with just a strong sense of knowing. And that happened about a month before I started my business. And it was the thing that pushed me into action. And after a long time, I weirdly think that it was a combination of Flora and Zephyr, which I guess come together sometimes. So anyways, that's a weird one, but it was a very powerful experience for me. It was almost a non-experience when you go to share it. But when you
Oh,
have,
that's still definitely an experience. That's incredible. That's a lot of fun. And like, it doesn't always have to be like elaborate, huge things that are happening.
yeah, well, I think the part of you, like, I don't know, was true for me, especially I think being raised again in a religion. I think that there was part of me that thought if I was going to have an encounter with an entity, I was going to see like a light from the sky and there would be like angels and choir music and divine, like whatever. Like, and it does feel that way. Like, it feels that big when it happens. It isn't necessarily like what you're told about in stories always. There's sometimes it's a little boring. Sometimes it's hearing your name and then knowing the answer to something you didn't know you were looking for.
Spirit encounters tend to be more regular, vivid, and intense, or even information loaded once an individual is educated in spirituality and magic. This could be because the witch or practitioner is searching for messages and contact with spirits, thus more likely to receive them. This could also be because witchcraft and spirituality provides a set of tools to create an ideal environment with which to meet spirits. There's a long tradition of necromancy and spirit communication being associated with and in witchcraft. There are some best practices, so to speak, that we'd like you to have before you go engaging. First, we want to be aware of spiritual psychosis. According to BetterHelp, spiritual psychosis is not an official diagnostic term, but generally serves as a description of certain types of delusions and beliefs that can accompany a psychotic episode. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, which is based in the United Kingdom, psychosis refers to a collection of symptoms that affect the mind, where there has been some loss of contact with reality. Symptoms can include the following: hallucinations, delusional beliefs, disorganized thinking, speech and behavior, paranoia, confusion, personality changes, suspiciousness and unease around others, social withdrawal, decline in self-care, disruption of sleep, difficulty responding to reality, as well as hostility or irritation when others point out fallacies. Spiritual psychosis typically involves the above symptoms, but also has a focus on spiritual or religious beliefs. So it's kind of how you would then differentiate it from PTSD or depression, things like that as well. For example, an individual impacted by spiritual psychosis may believe they are a reincarnation of a goddess, or that spiritual deities and supernatural beings are speaking to them. This can differ from spiritual crisis or spiritual emergency, which may be thought of as losing one's faith or undergoing dramatic changes in one's spiritual beliefs. Common spiritual psychosis beliefs tend to involve ideas about the end of the world, the existence of other dimensions, mystical experiences, and beliefs that one is spiritually superior or born spiritually specifically to heal others. For the person in this altered state, these beliefs seem very real. Individuals experiencing spiritual psychosis may become frustrated or hostile when others challenge them. It can be harmful because the condition may lead to unhealthy behavior that harms oneself or others, including both suicidal and homicidal thoughts and actions. Tori, this specifically was something that you wanted to discuss today, and can you tell us why?
Unfortunately, with the grow of spirituality, means that people are documenting it a lot more in the modern age. And there are times when people are coming through and talking about experiences, kind of like what Heidi had touched on at the very, very beginning of this, where people will have episodes of spiritual psychosis where they are starting to dip into this line that's getting blurred between reality and what's actually going on in their spirituality. And it can be very dangerous, but also we're seeing that actively happening to people online, and people who are not aware that that is what is happening think that that is what spirit communication is supposed to look like, or that they're not really having experiences because Jimmy online is saying that he is the reincarnation of a god and is talking about all of these experiences he has during his spirit communications that makes everyday people think, well, that's not what I experience, so it's not real what I'm experiencing. But actually, someone who's going through spiritual psychosis is very dangerous. It can lead them into very, like Allyson had touched on, very dangerous behaviors. It can affect other people around them, their friends. I know a lot of people online, once they're out of spiritual psychosis, will say that they had very close friends that either caused their spiritual psychosis unknowingly or that they themselves accidentally draw in to spiritual psychosis because it can get amplified by having someone else have quote unquote the same experience as them because of this. And so it's important then when you're talking about things like seeing a ghost or hearing something that you're going into it with a bit of logic, which isn't as fun, but it is very important breaking down things like that so that you're not accidentally going down that route and feeding into it and causing future harm to your mental state is very important. Like Heidi said, having moments of yourself when you're getting messages or seeing spirits, taking a moment to yourself to say, okay, what are they saying to me? Are they saying I'm a god? Are they saying to go do harmful things? Are they saying X, Y, or Z? Does that seem logically like what a spirit that's my grandmother should be saying to me, or my deity that I want to worship should be saying to me? So it's important while we kind of touch on like how we go about communicating with spirits, that we are going about it in a way that's very mindful, that we're taking the steps to make sure that we're being smart and logical with how we're approaching it, if that makes sense.
With all the information from Tori and myself, what do we think about spiritual psychosis? Me personally, I see it as it's a way to absolve people from individual responsibility and accountability in the sense that there's somebody external to blame. I know that I cut you off on the freeway, but my spirits told me I really had to get to the dealership to buy a Prius today. So I'm really focused. It excuses a lot of really bad behavior, and we see that in cult leadership as well.
Just as a thought about what you were just saying, I think that that's really true. And the dangerous path there is, I know that you think this is what you want, but I know what you actually need because my way of thinking is superior. I am superior, right? That becomes a very dangerous, slippery slope when you think you know better, or you think that the way you do things is the way for everyone. It's just another reason why it's so important to take care of your mental health. Because when you are doing your mental hygiene, right, when you're doing the things to take care of yourself on a regular basis, it will be easier. It will be more clear when you are getting a message and when you are having an episode or having a mundane event that's powerful and affecting you. So just take care of yourself. And the bit I was saying about people not being able to hear you is absolutely the truth. You can have both things. You could be having a psychotic episode and hearing divine voices. They're not mutually exclusive. But if you don't address your mental health, no one cares what the angel said to you. They can't. The leap of faith won't happen, so you have to take care of your mental health just so that people will take that seriously if communicating the message is important to you. Because that's one of the things I found when people come to me, because that's something that happens, I'm sure for you guys too, when you're working, is you'll speak to someone who is clearly unwell. That does not mean they are not having an experience. It just means they have something they need to address before that experience. Just take care of your mental health. Don't feel bad if you need to go have an outside person hear what you have to say about it and say, hey, that makes sense. Or no, that sounds like maybe we should be talking about medication, right? Like that's an okay place to be. Go get the help, go ask, do what you need to do.
So my great grandpa had admitted himself to a mental asylum at one point in his life because he felt he thought too much. And by the time he got there, spent some time, went through some of the treatments and healing and things like that, he realized, no, I just think a lot, and this is not a psychosis or anything like that. I always kind of had that fear of, A, is it genetic? And then B, coming from a Christian background, is it a demonic possession? Am I going to invite something like that in? I feel like you really have to go into it with a lot of skepticism. The more skeptic you are, but also being open at the same time, the better you can observe and analyze. And then also, I mean, everybody's touched on it, like, take care of your mental health, because if you are seeing things, there is a possibility that it's something going on in your brain, and chemistry and wires and circuits are weird up there sometimes, and sometimes you got to fix them. But again, like Heidi said, just because part of it isn't, I don't want to say isn't real because it is real. Your brain is doing it. But is it your brain or is it a spirit? Is it your brain or is it an entity? And being able to know yourself, like we had talked a lot about in our intuition episode, and knowing that there are people to talk to. And sometimes it's hard to find them, but you can talk to people. And oftentimes you'll find people that are going to be like, whoa, bro, you're crazy. I don't want to talk to you. Those aren't the people that you want to be around. You want the people that are going to say, like Heidi said, yeah, that's probably a mental issue. I have this counselor that would be great for you to talk to. Or, wow, that's super cool. Maybe this is an ability you have. Let's delve deeper into it and try and do some research or practice together. Find those people. I think it really will help.
I want to touch on a more mundane example because we all kind of presented really exciting ones. And a more mundane example would be someone who specifically thinks that they're here on this earth to help people heal, or they feel that they're communicating with entities that you don't have access to. Right. So like there's like a level of gatekeeping in their work. While it doesn't always look like, Charles Manson, it could be somebody that's around you, right, that recently made major life decisions because spirit told them to, not necessarily listening to their intuition. That is a more mundane example that illustrates that absolving of responsibility, or that hyper focus on responsibility, almost like a God complex, right? Rather than thinking I am the incarnation of a deity.
Everyday people can go through this, and that does not mean that there is something wrong with you. That does not mean that you are a bad person or anything like that for going through spiritual psychosis or things that are similar to it.
A great example of, there are lots of people now who have channeled books. Okay. That concept to me is a powerful one because it speaks to a couple of things that we're talking about right now. But one of them is like you don't have access to this information. It's, yeah, that's true. But the access is the only access you have to this information is through me, through my telling of this story. Right. So then you get these people who channel books, sell the book, and it's something that it doesn't sit right with me. And it's not, and here's what I would say. It's not like there's no value in those books. I've read so many channeled books, and there's tons of information to be had, but it's kind of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? It's not like there's no information in that book, but he's trying to sell you a board game. He's trying to sell you something, literally. I don't think it's any different here. It doesn't mean that those people don't have a genuine message that could help you grow, that could help you spiritually. I do think that it does mean they are looking at a profit margin.
These best practices, we only have two. Have that healthy skepticism, and then also practice good spiritual hygiene, things like grounding and shielding, which we'll talk about in future episodes, discharging energy, releasing it to the earth, and then putting up protective spells or wearing protective crystals, pendulums. I meant pendants, things like that.
You can wear a pendulum if you want.
Cleansing and discharging your energy and your aura. It's a sponge. You suck up all kinds of exciting energy all day, and you have to get rid of it or it's gonna drive you nuts. Also, thanking spirits for using energy and taking time to communicate with you would be one that I would gold star. You just want to be a good person, right? These are relationships these are people that you're engaging with, or entities, right? Sentient entities. And you want to be polite if they're polite to you. Makes sense?
We've been traveling together down a dark path. Now it's time to take a break and listen to some of our sponsors. This episode of A Dark Path is sponsored by
Light the way on your dark path with Wise Wolf Craft's unique selection of tools for living with intention. From manifestation kits to altar items and divination tools, we have everything you need to connect with your inner wisdom. Wise Wolf Craft offers Reiki and other energy healing sessions, divination readings, and a variety of classes on topics like intuitive tarot and personalized spell work. Unleash the power within. Visit Wise Wolf Craft today online at wisewolfcraft.com and on Facebook and Instagram as @WiseWolfCraft. Wise Wolf Craft, tools for living with intention. Needing guidance on your dark path? Explore the mysterious world of Jupiter's omens, offering handmade rituals, spells, and tools to focus your intention during spell work, vintage altar tools and decor, and intuitive tarot sessions utilizing claircognizance. Visit Jupiter's Omens, where the mystical and macabre meet, at jupitersomens.square.site. That's jupitersomens.square.site.
Let's get into discussing spirits and spirit communication in our personal practices. Kristen, will you lead us off?
Absolutely. In what ways do I interact with spirits in my practice? Most often, meditation. Meditation just specifically. And I really like doing bath meditations. I have sensory processing issues, so it kind of helps to shut everything down when I'm in the water so that I can just kind of be more focused and connected rather than being like, I feel everything on my freaking skin all the time and these socks and I hate them and oh my God. Anyways, I use tarot a lot, especially when I come to crossroads and I need some guidance. Candle scrying is something that I did when I was younger, not knowing what the term was or what it was or what I was even doing. But you can stare into fire and just kind of see messages and prayer. I was a Christian Baptist and never baptized. I just went. That was one of the biggest things for me to be able to feel connected was to sit on my own and pray. I pray to spirit and I pray to the universe. Often starting the process of communication is a meditative process. I analyze and consider my breathing. I'll ground myself and usually open up my mind to be able to receive. Sometimes I'll get something to aid like that. If I'm going more of a ritualistic route, I might set up some candles or incense, set out some crystals. Oftentimes, if I'm doing a more ritualistic thing, I'll bathe or shower before and kind of really prep myself into that situation. But I mean, just as often as I do that, I'll just sit and observe things, in my surroundings, symbols, things that replicate themselves. It doesn't always have to be like this big grandiose production. Like sometimes I'm just sitting in my car or I'm outside weeding my lawn and I just talking, whether it's talking to the earth, talking to the plants, talking to the energies around me. It doesn't have to be a huge, big production. You can just talk. Sure, people probably walk by me weeding and are like, what the hell? Currently, I am trying to connect with a life guide, kind of that specific guide that's kind of, I don't know, assigned to you. I'm learning and I'm researching, so I may not say all the right things because I'm still learning. I've also been working a lot with three particular deities, but two right now, Freya and Hecate. I love them because they are very strong, badass women who are like, I'm gonna do my thing. And I think that's something that I've really been able to like connect and almost kind of boost because they both have a very strong light and dark femininity. They have a little bit of masculinity as well with their divine essence.
In my practice, it's interesting because when you do it as your job, I feel like I have a personal practice and then I have what I do at work. In my work practice, like I said before, I communicate with people mainly, I think, through tarot is how I end up communicating with spirits when we talk about like grandma and grandpa, or when I'm talking about a spirit that's on someone else's team, so to speak, like not one of my own personal guides. Now, I'm also through my work, I'm an energy worker, right? So I do energy healing, work with people's energies. And in that is when I work with what I call entities, but a lot of other people refer to as deities. I'm not into veneration, so I don't do deity work. I do entity work, and I tend to do energetic exchange opposed to like veneration. In my practice, when I heal, I will heal with Isis. I will heal with Jesus. I will heal with whoever shows up. Sometimes it's people I don't know. As long as we resonate well enough to work together, then I'll work with that entity. I have yet to come into the circumstance where somebody's vibrating so differently than me that I cannot work with them. I think that because of the way my personal setup is, those people tend to just not want to work with me. Like they don't come to me at all. So that's been great so far. I I don't know if that'll change, but so far so good. But one of the big things for me for process of communication, because I was raised Catholic, I definitely came into it with a fear. For a long time, I wasn't going to do NAD work. I wasn't going to do deity work. I wasn't going to talk to spirits, just because out of fear. And so one thing I still do to this day that's kind of like part of my comfort routine is I start and end conversations. I have very specific times when I speak and I shut it down when I'm done. And now some people are not like that. Some people kind of have open communication all the time going, especially with their own team. But that's not how I function within my own team. I have sit downs with my group. It's like we check in for a meeting and I'm like, all right, team, what's up? I think it's important to distinguish because it makes my process of communicating different, I think, than other people's. Because yeah, mine is definitely ritual based. I have clothes that I wear. I have instruments that I use. I have places I prefer to be. I have days of the week. I have days of the month. I have days of the year. But legit, one of the most important things for me is being able to be like, okay, I'm done. You don't get to talk to me anymore. You can't just listen in. You have to ask now. So anytime I heal, I have a team of healers that I work with, right? Typically, not always. Like I mentioned, Jesus is a male that I work with, but I largely work with female entities, largely female healer moon entities. They're all kind of connected. But then there's also step-ins like archangels that will work with me. Some of that pantheon is there. Also, I think like Thouth is a male technically. Like there's some men, but largely women. But then when I work with others, a lot of times their team shows up. It's not that I necessarily extend an invitation and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to see your team. It's more like when you get into someone's energy and start fucking around, people show up and are like, hey, what you doing? Like,
Mhm.
it's kind of more the vibe. And then as long as because not to toot my own horn, but I'm very benevolent. So when I go to do work, they come in and they're like, okay, I see what you're wanting to raise their vibe. You're trying to bring them to their highest path. And I also tend to not give any instruction beyond that.
I work with spirits very frequently in my practice. The way I would describe my practice is I do a lot of spirit work and I do a lot of plant magic. And the way I do plant magic, I also work with plant spirits. I communicate with them through like tarot cards very commonly. Pendulums is a big one. I love pendulums because they're very easy and quick for communication. Unlike Heidi, I have a very like chill, constant communication. So I do meditations a lot, specifically meditations with like my main people. I've had ancestors come through as well, though, but communicating for me is very chill. Purposely so. I find for myself, having it be too formal is stressful for me. I like having the relaxed communication. I like being able to talk to them whenever and not feel like I have to go through a ritual. If I'm working with someone for the first time, I will do something more formal with them. So I have a lot of animal spirits. I have bones. And so when I'm working with certain bones for the first time, I will do a ritual to connect with them and see if they are willing to talk to me yet or if they need more time. I have kind of I would say, unique view on them of either I can connect in with the spirit that owned the bones originally or the collective of the animal. So, for example, I have a raccoon. I primarily work directly with her spirit because I have a skull of her. But with other animals, sometimes I am just connecting in with the deer's energy as a whole. So it's more of like an entity collective versus like an individual spirit. And then I also have plant spirits. So my living plants, you can see behind me well, no one else can see this, just the friends in the chat. But I have a lot of plants and I do workings with them and I do connect in with them. I have plant wards. I have plants assigned to certain aspects of my life to aid in certain things. But when I connect in with them for the first time, it is more of like a ritual. Or if I'm connecting in with like a deity or something like that for spell oils, when I do custom oils for other people's deity work, I'll do kind of like I guess the word would be seance, but I like invite them into my space and I do kind of a more ritualistic interaction with them. And then once I kind of am more like familiar with spirits, it's not as much like a ritual for me. Then it's like I'm comfortable with them. It's just kind of pulling out a pendulum, pulling out tarot cards, doing more casual things. And then I have my main team that I work with. I work with the Morrigan and Ceranos. I've also worked with Odin and Loki. Those two aren't really in my practice at this time anymore, but the Morrigan is my main person on my spirit team. She is my main person in general. I communicate with her almost daily. I have a space for her on my altar, as well as Ceranos. They're kind of my like divine feminine, divine masculine counterparts, so to speak. They are like the biggest aspect of my practice. I see her as like one of my guides in life, and I'm very deeply connected in work with her with any working that I do. Any working, the Morgan is working with me on it. Then sometimes I will bring in like my animals or a plant or other things.
So my work is centered around working with spirits. So I'll call on them as I'm making spells, but then I also use them when I read tarot and use pendulums, and then also doing like mediumship work and seances. So I'm like regularly talking with spirit guides and deities, whoever's attached to a person, including grandma and grandpa. In my personal practice, I interact with spirits by paying homage to my ancestors. I have an ancestor jar with trinkets that belong to people who are living and deceased, but they have ties familially. I'll leave water out for them, things like that. Also, in my personal practice, I do all of the stuff that I do for work because I love it. We're looking at tarot, pendulums, meditation, seances. I have dowsing rods that I enjoy using a lot, and then the Ghost Talker app that Kristen mentioned earlier. But I do also sometimes see things against my will. That's a thing that I'm still working on, specifically like ectomists, things like that. Ectogasm, ectomist. The process of communicating for me in work is really straightforward. Cards come out, everybody knows that it's time to work. When I connect empathetically with the person that's sitting across from me at the table, I feel like that connection has been made with both of our spirit councils as well, that we can communicate rather openly and freely. It's like super laid back. There's not a lot of pomp and circumstance about it. And even with seances, there's like a little bit of preparation where I focus on cleansing and discharging energy just to make sure that anyone who's coming into it isn't bringing something that's unwanted to the table, and or we understand what energy we're working with ahead of time. If I want to get really fancy, I'll take a shower and make sure that I'm grounded and centered, that I can feel any energy changes if spirits want to interact a specific way. I invite things forward. Anyone who's interested in assisting my client with reaching their highest good or helping them heal through this thing that they're struggling with. So that's kind of the only place that I have a lot of rigidity, and that's really the only thing that I do every single time. They use my energy. It is exhausting. So I cap it at an hour or two. And I always thank them afterwards for coming because it also uses a lot of energy from them. In meditations, I do way, way less. Whatever wants to come through to help me on my journey is allowed to come through. And they'll send me images, messages, whispers, all kinds of stuff. I specifically work with a few deities outside of my spirit guide team. My spirit guide team, I don't know everybody who is on it. I only know 2 family members, and then the deity Artio, which I reference quite frequently. She's kind of my main guide on my journey, and she's recently introduced me to friends of hers, Beli Mar, which is a Welsh god of light, fertility, and the sun. So it's the Welsh equivalent of Lu. I also work with Morgos, which is the Welsh goddess of death, fate, the other world, and the sea. She's the half sister of King Arthur and a version of the Morrigan. I don't really worship anything. I'm an animist. I believe that everything has spirit. So if anything, I more so worship nature. I'll leave offerings and things as thanks, but I don't overly celebrate it, right? I'll leave offerings as thanks. And I do the same thing with Artio. So for the last segment of this episode, we wanted to do some quick fact and misconceptions surrounding spirit communication and witchcraft in general. To get us started, do you actually see spirits? My answer is yes, but not always.
My answer is
Yeah.
yes, but not in the way people think.
I also agree. Yes and no. There's different ways of seeing than just straight through our visual icons.
And I just agree with all of you. I thought that was very well put.
Is working with spirits evil? And I mean this in the sense that mainstream religion typically thinks of working with spirits as being evil. Necromancy is frowned upon. It's not a thing that you're supposed to do. No divination, no magic tricks, no nada. And my answer is no, I don't think that it's evil. In fact, I think that it's healing, and oftentimes it helps people have better understanding about things.
I agree.
I totally agree, but I also firmly agree it's like anything. If you work with ghosts because you want to fuck with them and be an asshole, then no, that's evil. Like, I don't know, like it's just don't be evil and it's not evil, right? Intention.
I definitely don't think that spirits themselves are evil. Do I feel that there is trickster energy and there's some things that can be manipulated toward an evil or a dark side? Yeah. But do I think working with spirits is evil? I mean, how many freaking cultures and people over the years who have honored their ancestors? That's working with spirits. That's not evil. That's connecting with your family. So no, in theory, no, it's not evil. Can it be used for evil purposes? I think it depends on the wielder.
Can I accidentally summon something that's evil?
Yes, and you don't have to be working with spirits to do so. And didn't mean to jump right into that one, but when I saw you wrote that down, I was like, fuck yes, you
I
can.
love
Yuck,
your passion.
yes. Yes, I am. That's because that's one of the things I think that's really interesting is I think people invite weird energy into their life all day long. And could you invite an entity into your life on accident? Absolutely. If you are living the life that that entity wants to see, it will pay attention to you.
I think the answer is no.
I think you totally could.
We're talking about summoning, right? And that to me is
That's
a
what I
very
was going to say.
intensive process.
Well, I just think of it this way. Think if you're really low vibe.
But
And that's when a lot
evil,
of us enter the situation. No, not evil, just really low vibe. You're really struggling. Okay. So then you go to your board, you go to the cards, you go wherever, and you're like, help me, universe. I need help. And you're sending out this big, gnarly, low vibe signal. It's not like only high vibe things are going to hear that. And
yeah.
unless you are closing energetic loopholes, I don't know if they're just going to close themselves. Now, if you've got a kick-ass team and you're really hooked up in just very low vibe, your guides will probably close some of those holes for you, right? Like that's why they're there. However, sometimes shit happens
Yeah.
on accident. I think that's why a lot of that shit does go down on accident. I don't think you have to be fearful of it. I think you set intentions and you don't go into it lightly. You don't go into it to fuck around. You go in it to do something specific with an intention.
People think of the devil like when they ask that question, right? And to summon Satan, you need specific stuff.
On
that
accident,
people
Think about
too.
my baby eater, though. Think about my baby eater, okay? So remember my comparison that we have this thing that lives. The only way it lives is by eating babies, okay?
Right.
It's not evil for eating, but for us, yeah, it's evil to eat babies. So could you be trying to summon something that is energetically neutral, but has a very powerful negative thing that it does in our realm? Could it come here and do great evil? For fucking sure. And I know the baby eater is extreme. That's not a real thing. You don't have to fear that guy. I made him up. I just mean
Note to the
that's something
listeners,
that
there is no
people
baby.
believe
Well,
pretty
maybe,
easily. I do think you're right about like if you're trying to get somebody specific, are you going to accidentally knock on the devil's door? I mean, that's a little intense. That seems a little, but I also know people who get desperate and cut their hands open and are like, I need fucking help, blood everywhere. And it's like, okay, let's see what happens. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, like, again, that's something that, like, if you give your blood, you give your sweat, you give your energy, your tears, that's real shit. That's real magic.
I think if you are doing like a seance, you are purposely summoning the Morgan and you are doing X, Y, or Z, you are specifically trying to get her. You cannot accidentally summon something quote unquote evil, is my viewpoint. Because the act of doing a summoning is requesting a specific thing. It's just that that person is not going to show up. However, I do think that if I was trying to summon Baphomet, I could not do that accidentally. And I do not view him as an evil being, even though he is a devil or a demon. I think that there is neutrality in all energy. Like, he is not inherently bad. How we, with our societal viewpoints of things, he is evil. but energetically, spiritually, he is not evil. He could do things for you that are good or societally viewed as good. He can help you with abundance. He can help you with other things. Lucifer loves helping people with abundance. I do not think that most things we view as evil can be easily summoned. Can I accidentally, like, bring into my room an evil creature? No, I don't think that you can.
What if you're somebody, how we always joke, I'm Glenda, right? Like I'm the White Witch. What if you're not? What if you're Veruca? What if you come into this with some heavy, dark shit in your head and you're like, this is what I want it to be. I'm going to draw a fucking pentagram on the ground and I'm going to drip my blood into it. And then I'm going to open my vagina and be like, jump in. Thinking that they're just trying to be entering a world when really they're taking very big,
summoning
bold
anyone at
steps.
that point, though. That's
Yes,
my point.
I think that's the very good advice.
Is that they shouldn't be summoning anyone in that moment.
I'm not going to sit down and just write a letter and hope that somebody gets it. I'm going to write a letter to my grandma. I'm going to write a letter to my best friend or my overseas, whatever. So there's that intent. So I feel like the reply back is going to be from something that whatever you're giving off. If you're giving off like I'm crazy and I want to murder everybody, then you're probably going to get something that's pretty intense and psycho back. But if you have the intent, no, I think it's much less of a chance. However, being a person who has had trauma to where I cannot trust people, I also have a problem trusting an entity. So I have to be very specific on what I want or who I want to talk to because I know there is bad in the world and I know that it can come from the most beautiful package. No, you cannot accidentally do it because you have to have that intention. I see both sides of it because I do also have that fear of what if I pull in someone who is this entity saying, I'm here to help you. Possibly they are, but not in the way that you expected.
That is what it's about. If you're afraid of accidentally summoning something that's evil, you are more likely to accidentally summon something that is evil because you're already putting that intention out there. You're inviting it in by saying, I'm afraid of this thing possibly happening. You don't have to say the stuff aloud. They know that you're afraid. They can hear that you're afraid. They can sense that you're afraid. So if you're going into or trying to do summoning stuff, afraid of bad stuff happening, bad things will happen to you. That is a big part of it too. What your beliefs are how things will manifest.
Yeah, and I think that's why things like angels and deities and demons can't get labeled with good or bad, because if you're going to the nicest angel and you say, this person hurt me and I want you to fuck them up, they're gonna fuck them up.
Right. Let's talk about that. Are angels good and are devils bad? Obviously, we know Tori thinks the answer is no.
Angels are a real old school Bible, right? That was a very scary story. That was not a light story. They're destroying towns and like lots of wrath, lots of rage. But I don't, outside of societal stuff, it's all very baby eater. It's all very energies just existing in the form they are. So it's hilarious in our shows. It always comes back to definitions, intention, and good mental health. So I feel like we kind of hit the trifecta here because, right, we're like, well, is it evil? Like, how do you define evil? Is it really evil or is it just, right? Because it's the truth. I agree. Nothing's that black and white.
So demons specifically are kind of like that big, tall, scary man. Maybe he's a motorcycle biker dude or something. And you go up to him, he's the sweetest motherfucker you've ever met. Give you a shirt off his back. And there's just as many of the angel types that are the same way, but they look more, angelic. But then there's also just as many that can be used in the aspect of more of an evil aspect. With Lilith, I mean, you didn't want to do what I told you to do, so now you're like this evil entity. So it's somebody else putting that perspective onto it. Even in Greek mythology or, Egyptian or any other kind of like pantheon, most gods and goddesses, deities, things like that are both good and evil. Christianity or Abrahamic religions are more, and this is again my personal experience, are more black and white.
Next question that we have, what is the difference between summoning and communicating?
Good question.
I view summoning as trying to bring them into your space, and communicating can be like calling someone on the phone.
I agree.
I can't say anything else. I absolutely agree. That's a very great explanation.
Next question. Are Ouija boards demonic?
No,
No.
no, no,
No.
no, 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 no.
Can I actually get possessed? Can I lose autonomy?
Yes, because I
I've
thought
never
about this
s-
more. So my answer is yes.
I agree with you. I've never seen it, but why not?
Do I think it's possible? Yes. Do I think it's something that sometimes can be a mental illness? Yes. However, there are very unexplained things that I cannot speak to.
So I have personal experience with possession in the instance of emotional hijacking, where you can kind of feel this other presence. Kristen actually was there as well. And Kristen, I think, was actually emotionally influenced as well.
Yeah, like an overwhelming sensation. It wasn't like
Yeah.
anything was said that triggered it. It was just like all of a sudden, it was just you felt just overwhelming sadness and like
Going from
teary-eyed
curiosity
and
and
like,
joy to this overwhelming sadness in a matter of seconds.
A hot take, I wouldn't
so
consider that a
in
possession. The way I personally think about possessions, that isn't, not that it's like not extreme enough, but it's like your full body was not overtaken. And when I think of possessions, I think of your full body as being taken over. So because of that is why I say I wouldn't consider that.
Historically and scientifically, we've proven that full body possessions don't actually exist. So I'm very skeptical to believe that that is possible, where an entity uses you as a meat skeleton to perform actions without your consent. We've been shown that that's actually been like epilepsy, that it's been shown
DID.
like other psychological disorders, schizophrenia, psychosis, right?
People talking about being like a vessel for a deity, they are still present.
Exactly. No,
Their
you
eyes
never,
aren't rolled back in their head and they're, I am Aphrodite.
If
Yeah,
someone does that for you, we're gonna circle back to spiritual psychosis.
right. So, right. If you feel like you're losing autonomy when you're doing spirit work, you need to talk to a doctor. If you feel like you're losing control, this is a symptom of depression. It's a symptom of PTSD, and I'm sure
Very
other
true.
things, but I bring it up because I've recently gone through it myself, right? If you feel like you're losing the ability to control yourself, that's not possession. You're struggling and you should reach out and talk to people and ask for help. I hate saying you should do anything, but you really should.
Yeah, that's a strong recommendation, not you have to, right? That's I'm saying strong recommendation.
Do I need to lock my mirrors? No. I think if you believe that you need to lock your mirrors, yes. I think if you don't believe you have to lock your mirrors, no.
I lock my mirrors not for spirits, but for people.
Ooh, plot twist.
Plot twist.
I only lock mirrors that I have open. So if I use my mirror for scrying, if I use it like an energetic tool, I turn it off when I'm done. That's kind of the mentality, right? Turn it on, turn it off.
I lock them, but I'm not like crazy sigil person. I am like Windex, wipe it down in like a clockwise pattern and think about like nothing getting through. And that's it.
I just had the realization that I do lock my scrying mirrors. So yeah, I really do what Heidi does.
How can I get started with deity work? See if you have any that are spirit guides and start there. See if there's anybody who's already working with you and you just don't know it.
I did a meditation and that's how the Morrigan came through. And I've also had ones where I had them reach out to me through a lot of signs, and then I just researched signs and saw what came up. And then I have other deities that I was interested in them specifically, and so I reached out.
That's something that I'm actually currently in the process of. So for me specifically, it started out with YouTube videos, like what have other people found on this? My very first deity work was with Freya. My background is Norwegian. It felt really easy and really comfortable to kind of go to that, sitting, meditating. I lit a candle for her to invite her in. A lot of meditating, visualizing, and asking for signs.
As far as beginning work, I think one thing we all kind of talked about it, but if I were like starting, the things I would start examining are Do you see common numbers all the time? Do you see a specific animal all the time? Is there a certain phrase you're hearing a lot? Is there a certain pantheon you feel drawn to already? Those are the types of things we're talking about. I've never had a sign. I've never had something, but you're like, oh, but I do see crows everywhere I go. Okay, so start there. Who's linked to crows? What's, like that's a great place to begin. Meditation can be really powerful. I was going to jokingly say just close your eyes and ask who's home. Anything you feel very drawn to in your mundane life is a great place to start. Like I have a strong connection with dogs, animals, right? So that's my business is wolf. That's been something that's been thematic for me that came from my mundane life. Petitioning is awesome. If you have someone you don't know if you're connected to them, but you want to be, go ahead and try.
How do I know that I've made a connection? You'll see signs. So there will be like things that are associated, like Heidi was saying, or you'll see numbers, or you'll feel more in alignment. Things feel different, things feel better. Also, when doing work with ghosties, you can kind of feel the presence. I recommend using technology that allows you to verify that there's somebody there. Test it to figure out, right? If you're using a pendulum, ask questions you know the answers to, or ask the same question across multiple days and see if the answer changes. If you've made a connection, it won't.
I would say for me, it's vibes. Like I will sense that there's something there, and then divination to confirm.
It's exactly what I do. The end.
I think it depends on what you're connecting with. Every time that I've known that I've made a connection with something higher than myself, it feels golden, crisp, and clean. And I don't know how else to explain it.
I think another good way to think about it is if you think you have made a connection, you probably have.
How do I know who I've connected with?
Ask, first of all, who is this? If they don't give you a straight answer or you don't understand, Google is your best friend. My favorite way to confirm who it is tarot, and then to look up cards that are who's associated with X card. So if I get the King of Pentacles, looking up throughout different pantheons who is related to that, and then being like which one resonates, and then clarifying with divination like a pendulum, is this you? And then I go into veneration to confirm that that's them. And that's like just researching their folklore, learning more about the deity, and then quizzing them, for lack of better term, like through a pendulum. And if they are not able to answer questions about their own folklore, it's probably not them.
I have very bad luck with identification. So what I would throw out there to people to know also is it only matters so much. Now, certain entities will care more than others if you know who they are. I think it's more important that you understand what their intentions are, what their alignment's like. I've had experiences where I'll Google something, put in all the things and not find anything and feel frustrated, and then come back to it in 2 weeks, a month, and find it using the exact same Google search criteria, right? It's just timing.
Can I add really quickly that the process is the same for ghosts?
I definitely agree with you guys because I feel like oftentimes it's like, hey, can you tell me who it is? And it's not like, hey, this is Becky. It's like, here's some roses. And you're like, okay. So you kind of have to be like your own detective and kind of like figure out like what's going on. I'm currently in that process, so sometimes I don't get anything. To me, it feels like, hey, this message is more important than who I am.
How do I know if I'm dealing with a spirit, a deity, or a guide? I would say, why not all three? Yeah, right. But also ask.
Yeah, literally, just ask.
To be all of those things at the same time. So also don't ignore that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm having a hard time distinguishing spirits, deities, and guides right now.
Have you needed to know which one that it is to have a successful interaction, or does it not matter?
I've had some wonderful experiences that I didn't need to know who it was. I don't know how to describe this. I feel like it's one big giant pool and you're just pulling out like the color of energy that you need to use. It doesn't necessarily have to be defined because I feel it.
I tend to use entity instead of deity. So deity's not in my vocab. I don't ever wonder if it's a deity. That's not something that happens to me. I wonder if it's an entity. An entity is what I use for non-human, right? Something that was never human. Spirit is what I tend to use for like a ghosty, something that was human at one point. And then I would say your spirit guides tend to be non-human, tend to stick around for a long time. That's the thing that makes them different, is that they don't go.
Communicating with spirits doesn't have to be nearly as intimidating or scary as it's been made out to be secularly. If you have any questions about methods or safety, please don't hesitate to send the show an email or reach out on social media. Our next episode is going to be about Samhain, and our first Sabbat overview episode that we are super excited for. It's actually one of the perfect time of years for meeting spirits. So now you'll have the information that you need in order to do that safely.
Thank you so much, both Tori and Heidi. We appreciate you so much. I am so excited. I was really excited for this episode just to learn.
So I'm the owner of Wise Wolfcraft. I sell tools for living with intention. We sell stuff for manifestation, stuff for energetic cord cuttings. I also read tarot and do energy work. I do small parties. I teach classes. Basically, if it's woohoo and you want to have fun, I'm your girl.
Thank you. And Tori.
Yeah, so I own the Spectral Cottage. We sell pretty much everything for your practice, from like cauldrons to burning bundles to candles. I'm probably most known for my ritually made items like my spell oils, bath salts, spell bombs. They are a million different ways to use ritual items, so you can make your practice a little bit easier for you. I also read tarot, usually just online though. So if you want a reading, DM me. I will never DM you. That's really all I got for it.
Tori forgot to mention your bone stuff, which I feel like it's
Oh.
very important that people know that
Yes,
there are.
agreed.
I guess I should have
Animals.
mentioned that. Yeah, I speaking of spirits in my talk about bones earlier, I do sell bones and I do sell like pelts and rabbit pelts and things like that. So I do have things very relevant to this topic.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, guys. You can follow Heidi on Instagram and Facebook at Wise Wolfcraft. And you can follow Tori on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the Spectral Cottage.
We're always looking to connect. If you have topics you'd like us to discuss, questions, or want to get to know us, please email us at adarkpathpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's adarkpathpodcast@gmail.com. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at adarkpathpodcast. Thank you for listening and joining us on this journey down a dark path.
It is now that our time together must come to an end. Thank you for joining us on this journey, a dark path come to a bend. Find us here bi-monthly on your favorite place to stream, and follow us on social media for news in between. A dark path is there, winding and waiting ever. May you craft peace, knowledge, and alignment, so shall it be, or something better.